Hi guys, happy Friday 13th. Hope you're having a good day. I don't know if y'all believe in superstition, but a little fun fact, not fun really, but many years ago, I cannot even remember the year, but I'm talking like late 80s maybe, like 88, 89. My mother was working at a little store for a little like gas station in the small town we lived in for some extra money, and she got robbed on Friday 13th. This guy comes in with a massive butcher knife and holds it to her throat and demands all the money. Well, of course she gives it to him, and they had cameras back then, but of course they were definitely not like they are today. And it showed him and stuff, but it never, the video never showed the knife. So it was, very odd, but they ended up catching the guy and stuff. But, we've never forgot Friday 13th after that. Of course, my mom, bless her heart, she's passed a few years ago now. But, so Friday 13th definitely rings bells of getting that phone call from her saying, I was just robbed. Anyway, I was wanting to talk to you guys about, I'm driving. If y'all hear a lot of noise and stuff, I'm sorry. I wanted to talk to you guys about, some people wanted to know the rest of the story of, me talking about the doctor that had no license. I wanted my channel to originally be about my health journey while I crafted, and whomever could, wanted to watch whatever they wanted to, they could or could or not. Anyway, I'm going to tell the rest of that story without telling the other 30 years in between of my health journey in jest. So let me just tell you about the doctor, and I will give you guys some hints so that you can actually Google this and verify that it's the truth. And I can give you medical records and how I, take out my name and stuff so you can see that I actually was this guy's patient for quite some years. Anyway, he, I'm not going to say names because I'm sure that's not legal. He was a professor. He had an office at a massive university in Florida. Think about universities in Florida. It was not Shands and it was not Mayo. It was not Cleveland Clinic. So there's only one other that I can think of huge place, and it's kind of close to, let's just say it's in Polaris County. I think Polaris is how you say it. So that's an easy find. You should be able to figure out which big university that is. So, anyway, after lots of issues, and again, I didn't tell the whole story, but I ended up having severe interstitial cystitis. If you don't know what that is, it's a severe bladder disease. They thought I had bladder cancer. Turns out that it was just the bladder disease, which, it's brutal, let me tell you. And so I got referred. I lived in Florida, but I was going back home to Georgia to see my GYN that I had for, like 30 years. And he was the one that diagnosed it, but nobody in Florida was understanding what in the world was going on. Well, I ended up doing some research and found that there was only 6 doctors in the world at the time that had true knowledge of interstitial cystitis. They call it IC, so if I end up calling it IC, it's the same thing, okay? Don't want to confuse you guys. So, I ended up being able to get in with one of these 6 doctors in the world at the time. Now, mind you, this was 2007, okay? So, He happened to be in Polaris County, and I go and see him. They do their, huge workup on you and stuff, and diagnose me with severe sick. So this particular university had a huge thing of doctors, and so this entire floor, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the 4th floor. They had the whole 4th floor was doctors about hoo-haws, and specializing in different parts of your hoo-ha and diseases and stuff. Okay. Meaning different types of cancers in different areas and things like that, not necessarily diseases as in STDs or stuff like that. But anyway, so I was seeing this guy, and he was telling me about, how severe my situation was, and that I needed, I needed a little more help. So he had asked me if I would see his colleague that was a pelvic pain specialist, and he was actually a GYN, but he was a pelvic pain specialist. And I said, sure, I will do anything for this pain to go away, because at this point they had said there's no way you'll ever work again because the situation was so bad, and I was only 37. So I agreed to see this gentleman, this doctor, for the pelvic pain, and he was the nicest guy you have ever met in your life. Just a hoot. He was funny, charismatic, like bedside manner was 100. Like, he was everything you could hope for and then some, especially when you're going through what I was going through. And so he tried a few things and what have you, and I really just was very impressed with this doctor. Now, every time he wanted to prescribe me medication, now this should have been a big red flag for me. Every time he wanted to prescribe me medication, the medication would come back in the other doctor's name. Okay, the doctor that referred me to him. And so I asked about that one day, like, why is so-and-so's name always on my medications? And he says, well, I have to do that because, I need to ask him if these medications are okay with your IC. Well, that makes sense, right? So you buy that story. Clearly, it makes sense. And so I said, oh, okay, I was just curious of why. And so, anyway, I continued to see him. We did lots of different treatments and stuff. Well, then we found out that he was going to be able to do pain pumps for people in my situation. Now, mind you, at this point in 2007, I had already, like, let's say between 32 and 35 surgeries for female problems and scar tissue issues and stomach issues and things like that. Okay, so this is at 37. I was already at that high of a number. I used to have one pretty much every year from the time I was 19. So anyway, the IC doctor had done an InterStim, which is like a bladder pacemaker that helps me go to the bathroom without having to use catheters and stuff like that. So the other guy wants to do the pain pump. Well, they come in, meaning Medtronic's the company that makes the device, comes in and tells me about how they work and blah blah blah. And I'm saying I don't want narcotics, and I didn't want to be hooked on narcotics and stuff. I was worried about that kind of stuff. And they're they're like, oh, no, you can't get hooked this way, blah, blah, blah. So they sell it to me basically, right? Like okay, this sounds like a dream. This sounds like a dream. And so I'm like, okay, I'm all for it. Sorry, having some water. I know you guys can't see that. So they, they scheduled me. I had already had my pacemaker put in for my bladder. They scheduled me for the pain pump to be put in. So you have to spend the night in the hospital. I did that, and I woke up, and they said, you're doing really good, you can go home. So I go home, and you can't lay down flat for, I think it was 6 weeks. So I had bought a recliner to sleep in, right? And so I go home. I was living with a boyfriend at the time, which we've known each other for many years, but we were kind of new to dating. So I kind of gave him the out when I found out that things were permanent, right? Like there was no cure for this mess. And he didn't want the out at the time. And so anyway, I go home. This was what, 48 hours maybe after they put the device in. So I'm in my recliner, and all of a sudden my head starts hurting so bad, like you literally, a migraine, anything you could possibly have, trust me, was nothing compared to what I felt. And I was screaming, let's just we'll call him Sam. I gotta go. You gotta get me back to so-and-so, which we live 2 hours from, to the hospital. And I said, I don't know what's wrong, but every time I'm sitting up, my head hurts. But if I lean it down a different way, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what's going on. I'm doing this up and down, and I'm trying to show him, yep, doesn't hurt. Yes, it hurts. No, it doesn't hurt. Yes, it hurts. Well, also, one of my best friends was staying with us to help take care of me and my dogs. And so, anyway, they got me in the truck, and they got the pillows and the blankets, and I laid down in the back of the truck, and I fell asleep. Well, I'm laying down pretty much because obviously I can't really prop up properly, and I was so miserable I needed my head to stop throbbing, so I laid down whether I was supposed to or not. And so we get to the hospital, and they put me in a wheelchair and was telling me to wait, and I'm like, I can't not sit in this chair. So I kept getting out of the chair and laying on the floor because it would stop. And they were like, maybe you cannot lay in the floor. And I'm like, I don't care what I can do. I have to do it because you don't understand. And so then I saw that there was someone, this is so stupid looking back and gross. Somebody had gotten out of their little bed at the ER area. And I was waiting for a bed. Well, they got out of that bed to go to the bathroom, and I went and crawled in their bed. Because you won't let me lay in the floor, you're threatening to arrest me, so here's a bed and I'm fixing to lay in it because I was desperate. So I crawl up in that bed, and now I'm kind of looking like a difficult person, right? So they had went and got the doctor, and they're like, she keeps saying this, we don't understand, blah, blah, blah. And they were saying, she got a pain pump put in 2 days ago, da, 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 da. Well, he knew right away that I had a spinal leak. And so he's like, just leave her alone. She's got to lay down because she's got a spinal leak. And they're like, well, this is crazy because you're the second person that's came in tonight that had one put in 2 days ago that has a spinal leak. We're going to run a caffeine drip. I said, okay. So run the caffeine drip. Nothing was better. So, of course, all my numbers were off and blood work and stuff. surgeon, blah, blah, blah. And so they're like, well, you have to wait 7 days to see if it's going to resolve itself because caffeine drip didn't work. So they met me, and we waited the 7 days. It didn't stop. So then they're like, well, we're going to have to go in and do a blood patch to try to seal the hole in your spine.
Larry has been.
You say you don't know.
Right back.